Hey everyone, good day. Thanks for joining us. I'm your host, Jeff Reinholtz. Welcome to MSP Insights. I am honored to be joined by Justin Smith, CEO of Brite Computers. Justin, thanks for joining me today.
Jeff, thanks for having me. Excited to be with you today.
So, Justin, I think you've got really a fascinating story. I think about, you being a guy that is in my neck of the woods up here in upstate New York. You're someone that took some time, moved away, found yourself starting to make the trail back home to upstate. And now taking a look at your business, something that I think, what are the numbers? 19, 20 years ago, you decided to step in, take on the business?
22 years, 22 years, 1999. Yep.
And it's impressive. As I was spending a little bit of time on your site and learning a little bit more about Brite, I think the thing that stood out to me was not only what you're doing in upstate New York, but what is it? You've got clients in 42 states right now?
Yep, 42 of the 48 contiguous states and counting. So we've got a few more to go, and hopefully we'll check those off our list here soon as well.
Well, it's exciting to see your growth and your story. I'd love for you to take a minute and share a little bit about what was that aha moment, right? 22 some odd years ago where you said, you know what, I want to get into this business. And, what was that aha moment for you?
Sure. Well, I think the aha moment probably started a long time ago, long before 1999, when I was a little boy growing up in a very entrepreneurial family. My father started his first business in 1979, and since that time has started, bought, sold, shut down, I think upwards of like 22 or 23 businesses at this time. So definitely grew up in what is, termed a serial entrepreneur household. And a little known fact is my mother is also very entrepreneurial as well. She and her mother started their own women's clothing store back in the late 70s, early 80s, and had a very successful women's clothing store right at the corner of Clover Street and Monroe Avenue in Clover Commons for many, many years. I mean, I think probably at least 15, maybe 20 years. So while I was growing up and really impressionable, I was learning how to be an entrepreneur from my mother and my father. And most people think, you get that from your dad, but my mother certainly is as much to credit for my entrepreneurial spirit as my father is.
It's interesting, and I love the play in both worlds where you got it from your dad and your mom. What were some of those moments when you were growing up? And it's interesting where you hit on growing up in a clothing store, because it's funny because there's a lot of connected tissue there. That's what my parents had as well, was a clothing store. So I was always just interested in saying, how do you go about life? There's always a joke I had with my buddies. You grew up eating pizza on Friday nights in the store.
Yeah.
And you saw your parents grinding and having some wins. Sure. What do you think was that moment, though, growing up with entrepreneurs? Did you ever have the mindset you wanted to go work for somebody, or was it really like, no, I want to go build my own thing?
Yeah, so that's the other side of the story, and really, kind of taking it full circle and looking at what took place in 1999. I ended up getting into this business with my father. He had sold one of his companies in 1997 and had been consulting really with organizations and working on different mergers and acquisitions and helping organizations, other entrepreneurs value their companies and package them for sale or some type of acquisition type of growth, inorganic growth type of strategy. And I assisted him in late 1998 with one of those endeavors. And at the end of the day, we kind of packaged up all the material. I helped him. I was working for Xerox Corporation at the time up in Boston, but with some of my evening time, I was helping him do some due diligence and research. And the company that we were actually looking at and packaging up this data on was Upstate Wholesale Supply, which is better known today as Brite. And, packaged everything up, didn't really think about it. I was enjoying living in Boston. I was having a very good start to my business career up in Boston. I was 3 years into what was becoming a very successful career there, and really had no aspirations of leaving Xerox. But we packaged up all this data, and all of a sudden I start getting these little niblets from my father and kind of needled from my mother. Hey, what are you thinking about coming back to Rochester? I was married at the time. My wife happens to be from Rochester as well. So we both had family here. And it was something that we knew one day we wanted to do, but we weren't thinking about that in the moment. And, a couple of life-changing circumstances. I had a really good friend of mine who passed away tragically. And it got me thinking more about how short and precious life is and how important family is. And so Stacy, my wife, and I decided that, what, let's start thinking about, moving back to Rochester. We were at the point where we were thinking about raising a family, and, the needling kept continuing. What do you think about doing this together? What do you think about doing this together? And the rest is really history. We made a decision early on in 1999 that we were going to try and acquire Upstate Wholesale Supply, now known as Brite. And we successfully completed that acquisition in April of 1999. And by the end of May, I was back here and working with my father at Brite as an owner, not just, an individual, but as an owner. He and I bought it together. So that was kind of really what happened, but it relates back to, that foundational entrepreneurial spirit that in the household that I grew up in. And then, the realization that life is precious and life is short, and that family and spending time with your family is really important. And I've been blessed to be able to be an entrepreneur, grow a business successfully, and get to spend time with my family and my wife's family. And our three boys have obviously grown up very close to both sets of grandparents. And, we're just blessed. I count my blessings on a daily basis, Jeff, daily basis.
It's really, I think, an amazing story about taking that step, getting outside your comfort zone, going into a new city,
Sure.
and then starting to hear that call back home, right?
Yeah.
I'd love to get your thoughts, especially being able to work so closely. You talked about your mom, the wisdom that she instilled at you at a young age, being around an entrepreneur, and then also being able to get into the business with your dad. I think you've got really a nice opportunity to have that thought leadership, but also having that person so close to being your father. How did that work out?
Yeah, well, it's funny. I talk about this often, but being in a family business has its challenges from time to time, right? There's a lot of dynamics that go into family business in general. My mother was in business with her mother, right? And her father actually was also involved in business. He was the diehard Italian behind the scenes running the financial numbers, right? He was the guy in the back office. My mother and her mother were off on the floor and meeting with customers, but he was making sure that the finances were where they needed to be, right? Fast forward to 1999, I get involved in this business with my father, and I certainly knew on the periphery what a great businessman he was and is still to this day. But we all have our strengths and weaknesses, right? And so it took us a little time to figure out what his strengths were and what my strengths were, and what his weaknesses were and what my weaknesses were, and how we were going to kind of mesh those together to create a successful entity. And that just doesn't happen overnight. It takes a lot of kind of getting to know your father on a totally different level. Like, he's always been my hero, still my hero to this day. But, at that point in time, he goes from being father hero to being business partner. And there's a big difference. And you need to be able to separate, those two things, right? You really, really need to be able to do that. And you need to be able to have tough conversations about growing a business. I mean, we were a very tiny business, $3.5 million, and 13, 14 employees. And it was a really small, truly small business. We need to be able to separate the things that we were doing from a business perspective from the things that we were doing on weekends, getting together to have, burgers and hot dogs and enjoy, family moments. And, that's tough. That can be tough, especially, being a young guy. I mean, I was 28 years old. I really didn't know much. I thought I knew a lot, Jeff, but I didn't know anything. Certainly not when you compare what I know today, 22 years later. So. It's really cool though. It's been a blast. I mean, I would do it again in a heartbeat. I might do some things differently, but I would do it again in a heartbeat for sure.
I think what we know is there needs to be a book on the storytell between you and your dad. Like it needs to be written, it needs to be told, because I think where you two are outliers is very rarely do you hear family business worked out well. Everything came out grand.
Yeah.
Somehow, some way, you hear a lot of these stories where there's a divide, there's a fallout, something doesn't happen correctly. I'd love to hear the stories if you guys ever decide to put that down in a paperback.
Well, it's been talked about a lot. In fact, in 2003, my brother joined the organization, and so that was one additional element to the family business dynamics. And he's our executive vice president and in charge of sales and marketing, and just an incredible business person, very talented. And he and I own the business together now. We bought my father out in 2014, and it's him and I now with this incredible team that we've built. And really he makes it work. He's the one that really truly makes it work. I give him a tremendous amount of credit because he came in 3 or 4 years later into a business that was growing and established, and he came in a role and a capacity, and he immediately jumped into that role and has continued to help drive the company forward. And at the end of the day, we've become this cybersecurity managed services centric business today, right? And he deserves much of the credit for that. I mean, he didn't want to get into a company that was building OEM white box PCs. That was our business at that time, right? We started, that was our heritage, that was our history, that's what we were doing when he joined the business. But he really had this vision of let's get into some of these other spaces, other areas that I think are going to just be huge in the future, and he deserves a ton of credit for that. So family business dynamics, you add a third layer in there, you go from 2 to 3, and it just becomes even more complicated. But we're writing a book. I write a chapter every year. I write a new chapter, and one day when this is all said and done, I hope to get the opportunity to be able to write it all down or clean it all up, because I've written a lot of it down, but to clean it all up and be able to publish it for people to enjoy, maybe laugh at a little bit, cry a little bit. Who knows what the emotions will be like? But
I love it. I think it's a great idea. So it's interesting to dig under the layers there and find out that it was your brother that really focused the organization to think about the MSP and the purposeful focus into the world of security, which I think is an unbelievably hot topic. We see everything going on in the world today, right? We find out how hypercritical cybersecurity is, not only for ourselves, but really what we're doing in North America and in all countries in reality, right? We all have vulnerabilities if we don't have alignment with people that can keep us secure. Justin, share a little bit about that pivot, that focus in 2014 into cybersecurity. One of the big things I take a look at right pre-COVID, what you built out with that knock. It's beautiful, it's state of the art, but would love to hear more about what you've done in direction and creating the environment, not only for your team at Brite, but what that's doing by the innovation for your clients right now. I think it's a huge investment that's going to pay huge dividends for you, but I'd love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, so the pivot actually really started occurring shortly after Trevor Smith, my brother, joined, and really, truly, I would say occurred in around 2006, 2007. So that 2014 number was when we, kind of brought my father out of the business and kind of moved into this business, just the two of us. But as I mentioned, shortly after he joined, we just started looking at, different areas to invest in and to grow the business and what that future looked like, right? Everybody's always trying to do a 3 or a 5 or a 10-year business plan, right? And, in our industry, it's hard to plan out more than 5 years, I would say, even more than 3 years. But the net is you got to have a plan, right? And so you've got to at least put it down on paper, and you've got to start to work to execute on that. And the plan was to really start looking at these thousands and thousands of endpoints that we were selling, and what was happening with those endpoints once we dropped them off on a loading dock, right? And after doing, some very basic marketing research and talking to a plethora of customers, we determined that, there's quite a bit of additional software and technology that was being loaded on these devices beyond just the operating system, right? And at that time, the security software was very rudimentary. It was antivirus, right? Generation 1, early adopter kind of antivirus. And not everybody had it. I mean, there was only a small portion of people that probably had that. It wasn't as widespread today. It wasn't kind of de facto standard type of stuff. And so, after doing that research, we determined that we've got to ask a few more questions here. We started getting more involved in the software deployments on these devices, further enhancing that software stack that was on them out of the box. And that was around the time 2005, 2006, 2007, people started getting interested in disk encrypting data at rest. And so we really got our start into the security space by working with clients to protect their data at rest. And at the time, the federal government was leading that charge, and that trickled down to state and local, county governments. We were focused with that. And then it's, certainly progressed into every segment of the business today, right? And it's not just data at rest anymore. It's data in use, in motion, and moving in and out of the cloud more importantly today. So that's the pivot. That's when it happened. We've really been now in this, what I will call cybersecurity space for, 16 plus, almost 18 years as a result of those very entry level, involvement, that very entry level involvement into, endpoint security, basically. Trickled all the way back into the core environment and up into the cloud now.
So it's interesting to hit back on this. And again, it's, I often joke, it felt like about 5 years ago, cybersecurity became the new buzzword, right? Everybody wanted to talk about it.
Yeah.
So with 18 years of experience, and I dare I say the wisdom behind it, right? Mm-hmm. Your team has been able to really evolve with everything that we're seeing and what we have gone through, right? I hate to say I've and just singular out myself, but thinking about what you've done, how you've evolved your business, how you've always really been cutting edge and what you're trying to do and ultimately try to deliver for each one of your clients today. How have you seen a data product really support your goals in delivering great experiences right now for all your clients? How do you see those worlds working together?
Yeah, so, that whole industry, right? The whole backup and disaster recovery world has changed dramatically over the years, and it's become it's really become a must-have, right? I remember back in the old days, there was this term called bare metal restore, right? You probably remember that, but there was this concept that you could easily recover from any catastrophic failure, right? And I'm really making it quite simple right now, but there was people out there, organizations out there touting their ability, their capabilities, their platform's capabilities to do a bare metal restore. That was not an easy process. We went through some bare metal restores with customers, and some of them went very smoothly and some of them didn't go smoothly at all. And what Datto's really done is allowed us to really confidently be able to restore customers' data when there is either a very minute or basic level need to restore that data, or in an unfortunate incident where there's a catastrophic failure, to be able to restore that. And for us as a managed services provider, right, when we're talking about small to medium sized business, 25 to let's say 1,000 user type of organizations, we actually, Datto's kind of like the de facto standard. It's a non-negotiable, and every single client and every single agreement that we have today, Datto's a component of it. Now, there's some customers that only have requirements for 2 terabytes of storage, and there's some that have a requirement for 48 terabytes of storage, right? But the Datto platform really does a nice job of covering the needs from the very small to, I would say the medium-sized enterprise. And it's proven time and time again to not only cover our butts, but more importantly, our clients' butts. And we've been able to build out a very, very structured disaster recovery programs for our clients and very solid business continuity programs for our clients. And if what we just went through proved anything, the need for a very solid business continuity plan and program is important. Now, data is just a component of that entire business continuity plan, right? There's so much more to that. But, back in March of 2020, there was a lot of organizations that we were working with that were making daily decisions to close the office and go totally remote, right? And that's part of a business continuity plan. How do you accomplish that? And then, God forbid there was a catastrophic failure and your infrastructure, either on-prem or in the cloud, is not functioning. How do you take advantage of a tool like Datto and run your business, right? So
hypercritical. It's hypercritical from a strategic perspective.
Sure.
So I like where you're going with that. I'd love to get a little bit more of your feedback right now when you think about what you're hearing from clients today. What are they hyper focused on? Is there a certain sense of fear on the topic of cybersecurity, or do you find more of your clients or prospects going, Justin, lead me down the right path? Once upon a time, again, early adopters were like, yeah, maybe I want some security on this device. Now, all of a sudden, it's like a no-brainer going, okay, where's my two-factor, right? Where's my encryption? You name it. Now we've got, again, terabytes and terabytes of data. We're learning very quickly. Somebody gets access to an oil pipeline, and it's putting the squeeze on a country, right? So what are your clients saying right now to you guys?
Well, there's a tremendous amount of fear, uncertainty, and doubt, right? The media is all over this. There's some type of hack or breach on a daily basis. There used to be early on, there was this mindset around trying to prevent that from happening, right? We got to prevent it. We've got to do everything we can to prevent it. I mean, this is 10 plus, 12 plus years ago. We've got to do everything we can to prevent it. And I still think that the mindset is you got to do everything you can to prevent it. More importantly today, it's if it happens, and it's very likely to happen, and to some extent, how do you limit the damage? How do you prevent that damage from going high, wider, and deep and isolated to a single device or a single system, so that it doesn't shut down an entire business operation, or, God forbid, a pipeline, right? A very strategic pipeline carrying, gasoline up and down the East Coast of the United States. So, that's a very extreme example, but this, in a very public example of a recent breach and a recent ransomware attack. But if you bring it downstream to a small to medium-sized business level, people see that in the papers. They see it on the news every night, and it gets people thinking. So a lot of fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And what we've tried to do is we've tried to build our Brite managed services platform, which we call Brightstar, to be incredibly comprehensive. And I like to refer to it all the time as the most comprehensive and secure managed IT service, period. And I truly believe that we've taken, our enterprise experience with large Fortune 1000, Fortune 500 companies. We've taken that enterprise class, Gartner Magic Quadrant level technology, and we brought that into a multi-tenanted platform that is, managed 24/7, 365 days a year by us, very proactively, very, very proactively. And we give people peace of mind. Now, it's not foolproof. It's not 100%. I can't promise that.
Yep.
We won't promise that. But that technology stack is incredibly sound. And then we layer on, Jeff, and I think this is the piece that people are missing probably the most. We layer on and really try to engage with our clientele in end user awareness training. It is so important today. If people don't know what to look for in a phishing campaign, in a spear phishing campaign, in a social media, mining type of campaign, then all the technology spend in the world isn't going to make a difference, because it just takes one individual, one non-malicious act to cause major issues. And there's a lot of data that's shared out there, but I believe the number is still somewhere around 70 or 75% of breaches are caused by non-malicious acts, right? I mean, people aren't trying to do something wrong. It just they're humans, and to err is human. So we're trying to prevent that through end user awareness training, stacked on top of that, enterprise class technology.
I like the direction that you go with that, where you're pairing in cutting edge technology, but teaching people what they need to be aware of, right? The technology is only as good as the awareness of the individual that wants to use it and deploy it and create the environment. Yeah. It's one thing that we are hyper focused in on, and a lot of people are normally just thrown back in the chairs, but we do this at Datto to ourselves.
Oh yeah.
Hyper focused on securities and vulnerabilities and making sure that our team is practicing what we're preaching as a company. So thinking about what you've done, how you package up the Brightstar, is that the term that you use it?
Yeah.
I love the packaging methodology here. Do you think once you took that approach, it made purchasing that much easier for your clients when they said, listen, it's a one-stop shop. I don't have to go and piecemeal things together. Brightstar is going to give me everything I need.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes it simpler for the client to understand. At the end of the day, I think the underlying technology is sometimes hard to understand for a small to medium-sized business owner that's runs a really successful accounting firm, or a really successful law firm, or a really successful manufacturing firm, or whatever it might be. They're in the business and they're an expert in that business, right? And so all of the different layers that are required to run an IT operation are sometimes hard to understand for business owners. What they really want, I think, is they want to come in the morning and flick the lights on, and they want it to work, right? They want to pick up the phone and they want dial tone. Well, they want their IT to run the same way, and as long as it does, it's great. And when you have a problem, as long as the support and service is excellent, that's what they want, right? So we've been about packaging this all up. We've eliminated a lot of the guesswork. We're constantly doing due diligence on the platform. We're constantly keeping the platform refreshed. I think back to the days when you bought licensing for some type of tool or technology, you bought licensing, and then you kept that perpetual licensing for 3 or 4 or 5 years, right? And you had annual updates or something like that. Well, we're updating the technology like constantly, weekly, daily, monthly. I mean, like firewall rules and security updates and stuff, they're happening daily, and we're doing that proactively for our clients. So we believe that they're getting the best level of protection and the best level of IT, just because of the proactive approach to it. It's one thing to call in and get support. That's a reactive component. The really underlying value in a managed services provider is their ability to be proactive and provide constant proactive support behind the scenes. And sometimes that's hard for clients to understand, but it's packaged. It's also understandable from a budgetary perspective. People know what they're getting every month. There's no surprises. We're not a nickel and dime type of organization. We don't do hourly this, hourly that, per call this, per call that. Our pricing is very, very well known. So as a small business owner, which I am, right? You don't like surprises when it comes to finance. You want to know what you're going to pay for something every month, every year. Very helpful. And we've really pride ourselves in that.
What I really enjoy to hear you talk about is 2 big pieces. Number one, I think it's very purposeful hearing the story about how you like to put things out to your clients. Number one, it's a fixed price, right? Number one, the business that wants to be great in accounting, I guarantee you and I do not want to divulge into the world of learning pivot tables and Excel docs and finance, right?
Nope.
Not our cup of tea. But
Nope.
they love it. They absolutely love it. Allows them to be great at what they're passionate about. While the IT and everything that you've built for an infrastructure allows them to have those capabilities and build confidence.
Yes.
The second piece I love to hear you hit on, Justin, is the willingness in the business to move away from being the order taker. And don't get me wrong, I don't want to have this said incorrectly, because at the end of the day, MSPs will field phone calls. It's a nature of the beast. But what I love is the proactive strategy that gets out in front of your clients with thoughtful recommendation as to what they need to do, why they need to do it, and where's the value for the business. And that's a big step for any MSP and any business owner, where you move away from trying to be everything to everyone, right? Where all of a sudden there's so much gray, there's so much vanilla, that you find yourself taking a step back and going, what's my identity? I absolutely love the beginning of the conversation. It was cybersecurity and we're the best. Here's why. And we package it up. Here's our branded offering to it. And here's why we lead with it, with an opportunity to get it. And then we layer on additional consult and direction. So for me, when I take that step back, if I am, again, running my accounting practice, it made it easy for me to understand. It makes it easy for me to want to transact with you, right? When I think about issue or topic, go see the guys at Brite. So a couple more quick questions for you. I love your story. I love your journey. I think the biggest thing I'd love to hear you share on, especially on the position of you growing up as an entrepreneur, getting guidance from your mom. First time I've ever heard that, and I absolutely love it. And I'll say that as a self-described mama's boy. Getting guidance from your dad. What would be the advice, though, Justin Smith today would give to his 28-year-old Justin Smith walking into the business with his dad? What's that look like?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think about that often. The number one thing that you need to do as an entrepreneur, especially as a young entrepreneur, is surround yourself with great people. Surround yourself with great people. Enable them to, think on their own, and encourage failure. I talk all the time about this, whether it's here at the office or in my personal life with my kids, or the kids I'm coaching in baseball or whatever it might be at the time. Do not fear failure. Fear never getting the chance to fail. And I truly believe that. I mean, we make mistakes all the time here at Brite, but I've surrounded myself with really smart and intelligent people, and I think it's important to enable those people to bring their individualism to the entire company, right? Brite is not Justin and Trevor Smith. It wasn't John and Justin Smith. It's the 75 people that work here that make up Brite, and the families that they bring behind them to it. And so surround yourself with great people, focus on culture, enable an environment, build an environment that is free of fear of failure. I mean, that's the really important piece. And I probably should have done that a little bit more when I was younger. Today I feel 22 years later, we've got a great culture. We were top 100 workplace. We win that award. We've been fortunate to win that award, which is employee driven, right? It's an employee driven thing. Probably the thing I'm most proud about is that award. And it just backs up what we're trying to do here. So again, surround yourself with great people, build the culture. You got to work hard. I mean, these are the assumption is that you work hard. I saw that with my parents, right? My father, my mother, hard working people, right? They were trying to create a better life for their children, and they did it, and by working hard, right? So that's innate with me. It's just part of who I am. It's in my DNA now. The things that I've learned are surround yourself with great people. build a great culture, it will take you far.
Absolutely love it. Absolutely love the direction. So if we were to kind of put a cap on the day, Justin, I think the thing that I love to hear is, number one, surround yourself with good people. Be willing to create the culture. Make it easy for your clients and prospects to make a purchase. Build that confidence with them. And ultimately, the success story continues to grow.
We're hoping. Keep our fingers crossed, right? Never hurts to have a little luck. My father told me I'd rather be, lucky than good any day. So I'll take the luck too.
Amazing. Justin Smith, Brite Computers, thanks for joining us today on MSP Insights.
You got it, Jeff. Thanks for having me.